Now, when you come to this body, you can create different kind of constraints. You create feng shui, crown chakra, these, that. So your consciousness start dispersing within the environment and towards different elements of the manifested world instead of staying in the body. That's why I said, stay in the body. Say, I release all the corrupt patterns of spirituality, of ideology, of understanding the world. What if you stop, divided the world? Okay, this is my crown chakra, this is, and this I'm telling you from the high spiritual standpoint. The problem is dispersion. You think too much, you overthink, you waste your energy by just even pondering and creating all these divisions within your mind and relating to separate elements. What you need to do is very simple. And your mind has to learn to just simplify itself by turning within and say, I just stay in the body. What does it mean? I just let go of analyzing. What does it mean? I just surrender into that peaceful presence of mind. So this way, you keep your energy free from other people's energies, from the energies of the external world, even if it's a stone or tree. Yeah, they are grounded in their own field and they're parts of environment, parts of nature. Nature itself is just like a part of this world's construct. So it's not something that we need to pay that much attention. There has to be respect, energetic attunement. Okay, season changed. I change my diet or I change my habits. If it's a dry season, I drink more. If it's a humid season, I drink, let's say, less, or I adjust something, right? Spiritually speaking, when we're meditating, we are concealing our field and we are learning to preserve energy. When we go out of body, if someone can do that, it means we learn to project our field, but in a safe way, so that we discover the invisible, subtle dimensions of our soul. So most of the people cannot do it. So we need to, first of all, purify our field by absorption, by staying in an absorbed state. It means you may interact with nature, but in a very detached way. So absorption happens when you detach from the projected elements. How do you detach? At first, how do you attach? First of all, you look at it. You look, okay, this is a glass, this is a person, this is a table, this is a tree, etc. This is weather. So that is dispersion. Detaching and kind of neutralizing, equalizing their importance in your life and drawing importance into yourself. I am important. Who am I? My soul, my presence. And then you plunge into it. The sign that you do this work of concealment and preservation of energy and purifying your field of foreign energies is that you start feeling, first of all, peaceful and warm. Your pelvis becomes warm. You start feeling this grounded and warm feeling when you detach and surrender into your presence in a very detached from the external reality sense, that nothing matters but you now. That starts increasing your self-worth, value. You start realizing that I'm already enough. I'm already grounded. Instead, I notice you have this tendency of the mind, which is, again, it's a soul trap. It's a pattern. Analyzing, describing, dividing, comparing, assuming logically, whatever. So it's not a criticism, it's just an observation. But I'm only here to help you spiritually understand the purpose of it. And the purpose of it that, I mean, not the purpose, but what happens is then you lose energy to this process. Now, all you need to do is every time you go into these trips, these, that, and you start being anxious, restless. The moment you start being restless and anxious, it's a sign you lost energy. Restlessness and anxiety are number one signs that there is a loss of energy going on one way or the other. So instead, when you do this, you say, to hell with that. And just be in the body, like kind of plunge into pelvis, relax your anus, relax pelvis, lower abdominal, just be. And say, nothing really matters. Just like, I'll think about it later. Kind of like, it's called self-pacifying. And then you say, I do not give permission to any thoughts and any elements to overpower me or enter my space of consciousness. You see, people, for example, they want to come out of the body, come in, have all these different spiritual experiences. But it's dangerous because if they do not know how to clear their spiritual field out of rubbish, and this rubbish is other people's thoughts, emotions, shadows, different kinds of impositions. So that's why we need to cut the cords. We need to bring our focus inside. We need to detach from external elements and analyzing certain things too much and just ground ourselves. So this should be your practice. The moment you notice that you go into just too much analysis, too much dispersion, what is better, what is worse, where should I go, where shouldn't I go, it's a waste. And I don't care whether you concentrate on the crown and this. If you go into dispersion in the name of whatever, religion, Tai Chi, spirituality, anything, it's a improperly understood spiritual process, what's happening. Because spiritual process means, what is spiritual? Spiritual is like your focus goes onto yourself, onto the essence, right? Which is eternal soul, which is subtle dimension of the soul that you are normally not aware of, because the mind goes dispersed by interacting with the projected elements. Now instead, you withdraw your mind from the projected elements into yourself. This way you preserve energy, this way you conceal energy, and this way you start seeing, oh my God, when I'm absorbed, these thoughts still arise. If my field is not pure, then it means the work is not done properly. So if you start going into absorption, but then very soon after, you start observing, oh, I'm thinking of my patient, I'm thinking of the weather, I'm thinking of my trip to Denmark. So all of this tell you that you've empowered these things more than you should empower your soul, your existence. It means that you are not really that deeply in touch with your subtle being, which is the primary fundamental aspect and the first step for spiritual evolution. The spiritual development is to be in touch, to recognize the essence from the projection, to discern. So spiritually speaking, viveka, right, in Sanskrit, discernment does not occur until that moment that you recognize, oh, I am the essence. How do you recognize? You become equanimous, you become withdrawn, you become absorbed, you become blissful, you become peaceful, you recognize it. And then you can constantly return yourself. So in Taoism, for example, they say it's a restoration. It's a return. It's the whole practice is just about to return. The more first you need to learn to return yourself. Then you need to learn to establish. Establishment happens when you conceal the field. So it's not only you return, but you also conceal it. You say, no, I don't care about Denmark. I don't care about weather. I don't care about all these things. I care about my own being, and this is just equanimity. And you start cultivating with time. That helps you to accumulate enough energy so your frequency rises and you start gaining knowledge from within, because you have not been dispersed. And so your frequency has risen, and because it has risen, your own frequency of the soul allows you to have access to spontaneous knowledge, to the high frequency knowledge and being spontaneously. So you start realizing things, observing things with a high awareness. So that's a process. By pushing chi, taking chi, this is all nonsense. This is again interaction with this reality. What's the accomplishment? We are already free at any point. Now we are free soul. If you just turn within, you're free. If you can stay that way, but observe the world through that detachment of being grounded, detached, and yet still observing the world, you start mastering yourself. You start opening up to subtler dimensions. If you're still dispersed, you're like dancing, you're rocking the boat in and out, So you start opening up to subtler dimensions only when you learn how to return yourself, how to conceal energy, how to preserve energy, how to raise frequency so that you start opening to the subtle dimension. But opening happens only when you withdraw most of your energy from the projection. Yes, you're still in the projection, you still participate to a certain limited degree, but your field remains protected from any foreign interference. You start recognizing subtler waves, then you start recognizing subtler pollution, then you start letting it go, severing the cords and links with that subtle pollution, meaning collective residue, mental, emotional, intellectual residue. And eventually you liberate your soul from all these subtle and physical traps. And yet you can still live on this dimension because it's a part of you, but yet you are untouched. It means now you have really set a proper foundation for further spiritual evolution, meaning opening yourself to that higher, subtler frequency of self, connecting with it, exploring it, discovering and ascending and going further out of this realm with time, meaning it's called transcendence. It's a process. But what you have been doing right now, it's a bit questionable in terms of the actual spiritual evolution. So just question, see how much you are in the projection, how much you empower the projection, how much you give out of you emotionally, mentally, intellectually to the projection. It means, what I mentioned is, it means you give spiritually, meaning you waste energy. Whatever your interaction is physically, it's less important than what it is mentally, emotionally, intellectually, because the actual loss of energy happens more on a subtle level. But you need to preserve it on a subtle level so that your frequency is higher, so that you can actually have capacity to open yourself up to subtler dimensions of your own being. And this own being is not limited. I'm not talking about an individual being, Peter, John, Joanne. No, I'm talking about when you go to the subtler, you start perceiving reality in a different way, in a more cumulative way, because you dissolve the limited construct within yourself or about yourself, the limited identity, you may call it, or limited self. Again, you can continue participating in the limited sense too, if you wish so, but your main focus will be higher frequency existence, even in this body. And this body can take as high frequencies it can take, because if it goes too high, this body will become just invisible, or, it might decompose. So that's why people also, after learning all the sciences, they also learn, at least within the Siddha, all the Siddha traditions, which don't need to be even named anyhow specifically, they all focus on also strengthening the body, empowering it in a particular way, alchemical way, or you can call it transformation, etc., so that it can hold high frequency, so that they can ensure longevity for the sake of whatever work they came here to do in a limited sense. But at the same time, they are not limited by this dimension. They, at the same time, simultaneously exist on all other dimensions, and not only exist because all of us exist, but they are aware. The difference between a higher being and a limited being is that the higher being is called high because they have access to higher frequencies of within themselves. So it means they have access to high dimensions of this realm. But the limited being is only aware of their body and partially their emotions and thoughts, and most of the time are possessed by these thoughts and emotions of the collective, and are not aware of what their purpose and existence is all about. So that's the difference, you see, between an awakened person, not only awakened, because awakening is not enough, refined, established, the being who has wider range of frequencies that they are aware of within them, within their own existence. They are that existence, basically. So they discovered creation to a wider extent. So, but that happened because they understood that this realm is very limited, so they withdrew their focus and energy from this realm largely, and they focused on sattva. They developed sattva awareness, the awareness of subtler dimensions of self, and yet they still can participate in this reality to a limited degree, to a necessary degree. Right? Yeah, that's the point. And so what I want you to do from now is kind of really ponder about it, because the work hasn't begun until you realize this very point. You can persuade anyone else, okay, I'm doing this work, I'm practicing martial arts, I'm pushing energy here, there. It's not about pushing it anywhere. As long as you still believe in or empower, it's mostly, of course, through beliefs we empower also, but it's mostly giving importance. What is giving importance? Is paying attention, giving conscious focus, meaning energy of self, to that which is just a projection, which is a limited element of existence, you know. And so as long as people, you know, pay attention to that more than they pay attention to themselves, and it can be in the name of whatever, they can say, okay, it's ideologically correct, morally correct, etc. It doesn't matter for the soul, because the soul is all that which most of the people are not aware of, the subtler dimensions of self. It wants to just purge, it wants to just free itself from all the self-created traps, self-created patterns, limited patterns that pushed it to dive into this limited dimension and kind of be hurt even, or be imbalanced. Hurt meaning to experience loss of energy, to experience imbalance that physically feels very, you know, painfully, feels like suffering. But in reality, it's just an energetic imbalance and energy loss. Pain is energy loss. And so the soul eventually recognizes that all the suffering is self-created because of limited beliefs, because of some emotional, mental constraints, because of the traumas of the bloodlines, etc. I mean, you can start dispersing it and going back and seeing the reasons, but it's all crystallized again, still energetically. And the karma is the physical body. It's crystallized in the physical body. That's why people start having pains and all, because all these beliefs, all these ideas are crystallized in the physical body. All these emotional imbalances and mental imbalances are the residue of this crystallization. All the body aches are the signs of constant energy loss and depletion. And because of that, we need to turn it around, focus within, and realize that there's nothing more important than my own being, my own soul, and turn this focus within and realize your own value. To realize your own value and self-worth means to experience the essence. To experience the essence means to awaken to the subtler dimension of existence, which is much more, you know, merged or unified or collective. Not collective per se, but it's a kind of cumulative existence. And then also start refining it, because there is also subtle refinement. Like physical refinement is very limited, and, you know, yeah, you can detox your body, no, but if you didn't detox your subtle being from emotional, mental residue of the collective, of your bloodlines, all the corrupt patterns, paternal, maternal, related to masculinity, femininity, misinterpretation of life, false beliefs, limited beliefs, etc. That all will be draining, dragging you back into the illusion of this world being something more than it is. And this is so important to remember. So when you realize that, your true spiritual work begins only then, because you may fall into your natural being, so what? To fall into it is one thing. To maintain it, to cultivate yourself that way is a different thing. Because when you cultivate yourself, it means you not only are looking for high, blissful being, but you work, you realize that this blissful being is actually you, and all that which takes you out of the blissful being is not you, is that residue that you have to let go. And to let go means you have to affirm that you release all these patterns. You have to feel that you release. if you're aligned with your higher self and you just command that you release, the body just knows that's command. It just listens instantly. If you say, I'm healed, with full conviction, you're healed. You're balanced. To be healed meaning to be balanced energetically. You release all these things out of your system, out of your blood, out of your nerves, cells, etc. It means you purge the karmic baggage, because karmic means it's the body. It's crystallized in the body. It's the pattern in the mind that pushes the body to appear a certain way, to act a certain way, to express itself in a certain way. And when we realize that, we understand that a lot of our spiritual work is done on a subtle level, but you have to become aware of all these patterns. Let's say, for example, a corrupt pattern, a corrupt maternal pattern, when feminine energy was imbalanced and tried to overpower the paternal bloodline, the masculine energy was too weak. There is no balance, there's no proper understanding of what masculinity and femininity is. When this happens, people, as a result of this imbalance, start suffering. They can't relate to the world in a balanced way. So it means they can't build family, they can't procreate in a balanced way, but they can't create peaceful, happy environment for evolution and knowledge, so they become corrupt. The cell of existence, the family becomes corrupt. The offspring becomes corrupt. The offspring passes on this corruption to further generations, and so on and so forth. And genetically, seed-wise, it all gets corrupt. And the result is the corrupt society. So how to undo it is to restore the balance. And to restore the balance means to awaken to the higher self, to recognize the importance of your soul, to realize patterns, traps, distortions, limitations, and to let them go just simply by saying, I release all these patterns. Every pattern you recognize, just affirm, continue affirming to yourself, I release all these patterns, and feel like you're releasing them. You're releasing them from your organs, from your glands, you're releasing them from your abdominal area, solar plexus, because they always are there. They affect these lower centers and create this feeling, I'm worthless, I'm hopeless, I am imbalanced, I'm this, I'm that. So instead, you release them and say, I open the path to balance, healing, balanced femininity, balanced masculinity within myself, the inner balance overall. I hold on to the essence rather than onto the illusion projection. And so this way, you realize what's true and what's false, and you hold on to what's true and you release what's false. So this is the way to work with it. In a very simple words, of course, you need to have more awareness, and awareness comes with time. The more you purge and let go, the subtler layers reveal themselves, the subtler layers of corruption. And so you let go of those. And so each time you release a certain layer of corruption or whatever pattern, you release energy from there. So your own frequency rises because your frequency was lowered by the corrupt pattern. Now it was released. So this is the process of liberation, and it's ongoing. So every time you release certain patterns, your power, your personal being, your frequency rises. So because your frequency rises, you start getting access to higher and subtler levels of dimension or dimensions in this creation, in this multidimensional realm and existence. And so you may say, you spiritually upgrade. You become more powerful. But if you plunge, if you stop at some point and try to fool yourself, create a niche, although you cannot actually stop the process, you can only just stop yourself for a while, because the energy itself, the energy of the soul, will anyways push you out sooner or later, but you may entrap yourself for a while consciously. Some people do that. They just say, okay, you know what? I don't need all this thing. I'm very comfortable in life. And they just settle for a while, but then something happens, and this happening is orchestrated by their soul, but by their subtle being, because it still wants to purge. It doesn't understand human notions of comfort and happiness. It wants to be free. So it will create a scenario, probably very negative, so that the person can be shaken away from slumber and continue the process consciously. And so it can be just happening knowingly or unknowingly, but the soul is still aware of itself, even if the limited mind is not fully realizing what's going on and the whole, process and the scale of this process. And we are all a part of it, because we're all within this creation, and creation knows its own ways and it has its own laws, and these are just the laws of frequency and interaction. And the more we go consciously into the projection, we can get stuck in there for a while, but on the larger scale, it's very still short time, because for humans, it can seem, okay, you just got stuck for a lifetime, right? But it's still very, very limited time. It means it's just a small type of energy that has been there stuck, because even the lifetime is a tiny fragment for creation, for eternity, because the soul at this point, our soul, is awakening to its eternal potential, to its immortal essence. And immortal, it means that it's in comparison with our mortal fragmental existence in this physical dimension, because it's so limited, because it's so limited energetically. That's why time-wise it can also be limited. But if you have access to the higher realms and higher frequencies, which means more energy and thus more time, you can also prolong your time in the physical body, but in a different way, kind of, because the physical body then also, you may say, gets enlightened by the higher frequency of the subtler being of yours. And so it gets supported to a certain degree, so it can choose how long it can stay and when to go, because it's free and it realized its freedom. Most of the people do not know what's freedom. They believe in, okay, I must incarnate if I don't liberate. They don't know. It's just they speculate spirituality. They live through illusions, and they trap themselves through these illusions. For example, I'm going to go to hell, to heaven, and this happens, that happens. So they live through this fear-based narratives and limitations. Okay, if I didn't do this practice, if I didn't pour water on Shiva Linga, I'm not going to be liberated. You are free every second, if you know that. But you know this only when you're within yourself, grounded and aligned with this high frequency. If you don't know and are not aware and keep on entertaining false ideas, they keep on draining your vital essence, and you plunge in the same cycle back again and again, because you don't know of anything else. You don't need to incarnate. You can choose any moment that you're free. If you can maintain this freedom by frequency, not by words, not by imagination, not by fooling yourself or becoming delusional, but just simply by being within, concealing your energy and realizing I'm free at any point. And if I leave this body, I don't need to come back. I don't need to be a part of anything. I don't need to support any limited construct or any limited paradigm. I can just be. And it seems so simple, but most of the people cannot do it, because their emotions and ideologies and mental, projections drag them back into this limited, paradigm. That's it. So this is your spiritual evolution in a nutshell. Ponder, contemplate, and let me know what happens after. Have you managed to simplify yourself, or you still complicate yourself? Okay. This should give you an idea. The focus for you as a soul is to free yourself from all these traps, projections, and giving power to outside reality more than yourself, and to start focusing and bringing your focus within. Even all this diet and all this is just secondary. The most important that you can nurture yourself and cultivate yourself from within. All of these are corrupt patterns of spirituality. All these corrupt patterns of isolation, loneliness, monkhood, this lust or monkhood or promiscuity or or spiritual deprivation or spiritual indulgence. All of these are extremes. This paradigm, this dimension, is the dimension of extremes and pain. And extreme also pleasure to the body, possibly, but not to that degree as you can experience when you're soul, when you realize that I am a soul, because that is more real than this. But before you realize that ultimate reality of self, you have to plunge into this illusory reality and face it and realize that this is not the reality of bliss, of equanimity. This is the reality of extremes, imbalances, and all I can do is withdraw myself from that imbalanced extreme reality and gain my own power by concealing my focus within and by keeping balance and equanimity within myself, first of all. I'm not criticizing anything, I just don't partake. I say, never believe or disbelieve, question. You can exist here, but not partake. So all of these things are critical to realize rather than just hold on to words and sayings out of context. It's important to really perceive the being. Before you awaken to the ultimate reality of the soul, you, or higher being, which is still you, but on a more subtle level and kind of cumulative existence within creation, you can't realize that on an experiential level that this paradigm is actually limiting. The more you refine yourself, the more you let go of those limited beliefs and patterns and corruption, distortion, limitations, etc., in whichever form, on whichever level, the more you start holding on to the essence and realize the actual essence. And that essence nurtures your physical body, dissolves all the crystallized, blocked areas, and you feel free and balanced, even while being in this body, in this limited dimension of extremes. But for that, you need to do work, and the only work is by restoring the link with a higher being, becoming aware of it, and through that awareness, cultivating it within. Cultivating means you hold on to it, meanwhile realizing the limitation and letting it go. Every time you let it go, and if the process is successful, your life changes, your body rejuvenates, your body heals, your body ascends to a new level. You as a soul start emanating a higher and higher and higher frequency. And you can't fool people about it. You can tell them whatever you want, but by frequency, everyone can feel who is who, if they have also that awareness. But even those who don't have awareness, they'll still perceive it to some degree, because we are still, even in a limited sense, even being completely ignorant and shut down to the higher reality of self, it's still not 100% ignorance. We, even to 1% or to 1 degree, we still somewhat know that we are something maybe more than just the physical body. But we choose perhaps not to empower that 1%. And our life is very tied up to this physical dimension and paradigm. But when we awaken, it means that we shift our awareness to the subtler existence, and that changes the whole narrative of our existing and existence in the physical dimension and in this body. You even perceive the body completely differently. Yes, you are in the body, but you know that you're a subtler being at the same time. You're multidimensional. And the more you ascend, the higher your frequency becomes, the more access you gain to higher frequency, and thus also to the knowledge of that dimension, high frequency dimension. That's how you naturally learn and upgrade. And your presence becomes more potent in spiritual sense, because frequency changes, right? And so the higher you go, the more effect you have on the collective, willingly or unwillingly. Sadhaka means that you know how to maintain your focus within and even operate through that internal reality outwards. So you can still operate your body without projecting your being outwards or constantly attaching emotionally and mentally to this projected reality. Speaking to you, but I'm speaking from within. I'm not extending myself, projecting. I'm just staying concealed in my own field. And because you're concealed in your own field, you protect yourself. It means your high frequency is intact and untarnished by other people around. So it becomes a natural protective shield against the subtle residue of this dimension, which is emotion and thought, the collective residue, right? Otherwise, people are open to the foreign parasitic waves of the collective, all these different emotions and thoughts. They're never yours. You just connect to them, and they connect to you by frequency. Once your frequency rises, you're but naturally protected by your own being, by your own higher frequency. And higher frequency is that which you may call unconditional love and above. Above is meaning there are high and higher frequencies of awareness and being and radiation. That's all. So please, from now on, really ponder and really try to cultivate yourself, even when you participate in whichever activities. Be within your walk, remain within. You don't just like, oh, what's happening? Because once you start paying attention outwards, you can observe everything in detached way. For example, you walk, but you observe in detached way. Tree, house, person. Don't overextend yourself. So if you learn to cultivate that like that, you will change everything in your life. Because then you gain the vision of the higher being of yours, which is your soul. This is the way you realize your soul purpose, because you are tuned to soul long enough to observe what your soul really wants instead of what you've accumulated in the form of limited information, distortion, corrupt patterns that are driving your life nowadays. Instead, you start letting go and coming back to the essence, and then you know that there's only one purpose in life for each and every soul, is to realize that it's free at any moment and to free itself from all these corrupt patterns. And I mean, this is relevant as long as we're here in this limited dimension, limited to the extremes of these dimensions, limited in time, limited by pain and suffering, and this era in which we are right now, even if it's at the end, but it's still, even the next era is not that far in frequency, but we are aware of our unlimited, immortal, eternal being soul, the ultimate reality. So that's the purpose, to return to that, to remember that we're multidimensional, that we're always free at any point. And there's nothing that should hold us back. No beliefs, no limited ideas. And as long as we choose to partake in that, it holds us here, nothing else, and it holds us from within. The patterns of punishment, self-punishment, victimization, guilt, shame, fear, resentments to the past, to anything, all of these are low frequency vibrations that hold us here, bound to this limited construct, and we can free ourselves any moment, any time. Because we are actually already free. And letting go is very easy. Just say, I let go of this, and that's it. It's done. But you don't know that. So now I'm telling you, try. Okay. So first of all, what are my videos? My videos are the emanation of who I am. So my presence is of higher frequency, or let's not put higher, lower. of a certain frequency. So this frequency, when you get exposed to this frequency, when you get in touch with this frequency, it pushes away all the limitations within you to the surface. So you become aware. Your task is to courageously let go of these patterns, which is very easy if you want to, because that allows you to exercise your will. Your will is only in that you recognize the higher will is to let go of all the corruption, limited patterns, and distortions. So once you let them go, your frequency rises, as I said. And because it rises, you start gaining, or just returning, simply said, to your natural soul abilities, which are what is clairvoyant, what is, being more sensitive or aware of subtle dimensions, means that your frequency rose and you become aware of subtle dimension, which is more collective. Or you start connecting your senses to the senses of the soul, you may say. And so you start just having these abilities. But so what? Yeah, people can report whatever they get healed of, but it's not the point whether it's emanated from me or from anyone else. The point is it high frequency? So if it is high frequency, it will always cause shift, because high frequency brings corruption and distortion to the surface to be purged. Once it's purged, the soul feels liberated on that level. It means it gains extra energy. It realizes, at least to a degree, that it's free, that it's blissful being. And that realization itself gains or gives it access to the, to its own abilities. The abilities of the soul are instant knowing, omnipresence, omniscience. The soul doesn't have lungs to breathe or, eyes to see, but it's aware and sees and perceives everything even clearer than we do through the body. So, when you tune into soul, or when people are out of their body and as just pure soul, free, they see everything much clearer. And so the more you tuned into your soul, the more you start knowing, seeing, without trying. Because you simply gain the ability of the soul. So far you had only the abilities of the body, the senses. That's a limited version of the soul seeing reality in a fragmented way or limited way through the body. And once you gain the ability of the soul and shift your perspective to the way the soul sees things, you may say you've gained supernatural abilities or become clairvoyant or whatever. It means that you just go beyond this dimension. You go beyond senses. You have the super sense. What is the super sense? In whichever way it reflects, it's the ability of the soul. The soul is aware at all times. The soul sees everything. The soul is not limited by any physical paradigm. It can be anywhere at any point of time. It can be in multiple places. It's just, in comparison with this dimension, because in this dimension, everything is linear. A to B, B to C. The soul doesn't know. This is more like a quantum world. Any moment it can change direction. It can be here, there at the same time. It's very difficult to contain it for a limited logical mind. Yeah. Anyways, so this is it for today. Really, this is a lot to really contain, even though it seems like very simple. But one fundamental thing is return your focus within and realize the freedom of your soul. Liberate yourself from the patterns. Understand what is imbalanced masculinity and femininity, paternal, maternal patterns, how you interpret all of these things, how it drives your life, What did you learn from your parents? How did it shape your life into what it is? How it limited your life into a particular stream? The pattern of the bloodlines are vital for our liberation. The realization of these patterns, are vital to our liberation. If you realize the corruption, you can free yourself.